All right, so let's pick up with the nervous system. There's got to be a better way. This is my first chapter using this system, so hopefully I will get better as I go along. Okay, so your nervous system is divided into two main components: your peripheral nervous system and your central nervous system. So on the right we have the central nervous system that's highlighted in green in the person's, you can see their brain and their spinal cord is highlighted green. The peripheral nervous system is a lot more complex. It's not the brain or the spinal cord, so that part's grayed out, but it's everything else. Everything else where you're collecting information or delivering information. So the central nervous system is solely the brain and spinal cord. Okay, now warning, I'm going to say something gross, but hopefully it's not so gross that you need to, speed over it. When I was in undergraduate, I was taking physiological psychology, and we were required to dissect sheep brains for that class, which I found quite not pleasant. Not my favorite thing in the world. So my teammates and I were given our sheep brain, and our first assignment was to cut off the spinal cord just below the medulla. And so first thing, we all looked at each other to see if any of us had understood any of the instruction we'd been given, and none of us had. So then we started all sort of looking at the brain, and we noticed that there was a stretch of spinal cord sticking out of the bottom of the brain, and then at the end of the spinal cord it was all frayed, kind of like a tassel. I mean, it really, the spinal cord was like this hard, well, rubbery cord, and then it had this fringe at the bottom. So of course, being the gross person that I am, I asked my TA, why does it look like that? And he said when the butcher or whoever provides these sheep brains retrieves the brains for us, and I didn't ask for details on how exactly this happens, but they get access to the brain cavity of the sheep. They just grab the brain and they pull, and the spinal cord releases at the connections among the different interneurons in the spinal cord, and I'll show you those in a second. Not in a sheep brain, in a cartoon. So you get this brain and then like 1.5 feet of spinal cord before the first connections appear. That was my first really like graphic understanding that the brain and the spinal cord really are one thing. I always kind of, thought of them as separate. You got your brain and then you have this cord that allows you to communicate with your body. But it's not like that. The spinal cord is actually made up of the axons and the dendrites that are stretching out from your brain that are going to allow you to collect information from your body and send information to your body. So it really is, they're integral. It's why it's called the central nervous system. Now your peripheral nervous system is different. It's not the brain or spinal cord, it's everything else. So it's broken into two parts. You've got your somatic nervous system, which is going to be in control of all your voluntary muscles, all your, we call those your skeletal muscles that can move you around. Soma means body, so soma is a good name for this part of the nervous system because it's the part of your nervous system that controls your body, right? On purpose, or that can be consciously controlled. The peripheral, oh, sorry, I forgot I was going to tell you this before. Okay, so now we're in that somatic nervous system. The somatic nervous system actually has two different kinds of neurons that really collect information and send information. So here we have this brilliant idea. I don't know about you guys, but I've been known to hold my finger over a candle in my life. So she's holding her finger over the candle. The skin receptors that collect that information about the hotness of the flame are called sensory neurons, and they are present in anywhere where you collect touch, so pretty much all your skin. We also have sensory neurons that collect information from your eyes, your ears, your tongue, your nose, stuff like that. So sensory neurons collect your sensations. These particular sensory neurons that we're looking at here are your touch sensory neurons. They collect the information, conduct it up to your spinal cord, and if you follow the track of the red line, so we're going up the red line, it goes to your spinal cord, and then you'll notice this little black area. We'll talk about that in a second. Then it's collected up the spinal cord and ultimately delivered to your brain. And in fact, there's a particular region that collects touch information. Okay, now you're holding your finger over a flame. It's probably not in your best interest for you to need to pass that in. Let's say you're doing it by accident. Maybe you don't realize there's a candle right there. So your hand is getting hotter, your finger's getting hotter and hotter and hotter, and your sensory neurons are collecting that information. There's a delay from the time the information gets from your finger to your spinal cord. There's going to be a delay from spinal cord to brain, once it's in the spinal cord, to get all the way up to that part of your brain that's going to process sensory information. There's got to be, milliseconds involved in that processing. Meanwhile, you're starting to blister, right? So you have this really cool adaptive mechanism called an interneuron that's in your spinal cord that allows you to reflexively move your hand out of the way. You don't need to even know what's causing that pain for your interneuron to send to the motor neuron to move your muscles to get you out of that flame. Meanwhile, that sensory information is still making its way up to the brain. So you've had this experience, I know, where you've recoiled. Maybe you stepped on something sharp, or you've stuck your finger in something, or maybe you put your hand underneath the running water in the sink and you pulled it back going, was that hot? Your brain's still trying to figure it out. You've already pulled your hand out. That's because of those interneurons that also can control your motor neurons. It doesn't have to come from your brain. You have a motor strip that's in your brain that controls those motor neurons, but you also have these interneurons that allow you to do those reflexive movements. So that's the somatic nervous system. You have the sensory neurons for collecting information and the motor neurons for controlling the movements. Then the peripheral nervous system has its other part, which is the autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system controls all of your self-regulated things, like your glands, your organs, anything that is taken care of without you consciously having to take care of it. Now, that autonomic nervous system is divided into two parts, sympathetic and parasympathetic. And let me show you a little graphic that makes these make more sense. Okay. So here we have the autonomic nervous system. We've got sympathetic nervous system on the left, parasympathetic nervous system on the right, and we've got our individual, our naked person wearing a spinal cord thong as our model here. Okay, so the autonomic nervous system. The sympathetic part arouses us, gets us ready for a fight or a flight. Okay, so let's pretend like you're going for a hike in the woods and you're by yourself. But let's say you're hiking in a woods that's near a neighborhood. Okay, so you're hiking in the woods by yourself, da-da-da. You hear movement of a animal that definitely sounds bigger than a squirrel in the bushes next to your walking trail. If you're like me, that's enough to get your sympathetic nervous system kicked in. It's going to get you aroused for either a fight or a flight. So what does that mean? The sympathetic nervous system will cause your pupils to dilate so that if you need to start running through the forest or whatever, you can see where you're going. It accelerates your heartbeat so that you're going to have plenty of blood pumping to your muscles, so you'll have good control and power. Your stomach will stop digesting your last meal, because who really needs that at this point? Instead, your liver secretes a bunch of your stored glucose, your stored sugar, and that's going to give your muscles power. Your adrenal gland is going to secrete a bunch of epinephrine, so that you have a bunch of adrenaline coming out into your muscles, and that again going to give you a bunch of power and a lot more endurance than you would normally have. It also is the thing that relaxes your bladder when you're scared, or makes you feel like your bladder is going to relax when you're scared. If you have a dog who loses bladder control whenever strangers come to the door or whatever, that's their sympathetic nervous system kicking in. And then at the bottom we've got stimulates ejaculation in the male, and I'm just going to say my example of taking a walk in the woods, hopefully this is not, hopefully that is not related. That's all I can say. Hopefully that is not, but in other circumstances, hopefully. Okay, so you're taking a walk in the woods by yourself, you hear the rustling in the bushes of a large animal, you're ready to either flee from it or run from it when it actually bursts out of the bushes and you realize, oh, it's obviously from the neighborhood, a big golden retriever, doofy dog going, oh, we go for a walk. And your brain goes, oh my gosh, it's not a bear, it's not a human that's going to get me, it's a big old friendly golden retriever dog. Luckily, you have another portion of your autonomic nervous system that's going to return you to normal. It's called the parasympathetic nervous system, and it calms you down. If the sympathetic's called the fight or flight side, the parasympathetic is called the rest and digest side, because we like things to rhyme. So what's it going to do? Well, basically, once you realize that the danger is over and you can calm down, it's going to pull your pupils back down to normal size, your heart rate starts to return to normal, you start digesting your food again, your gallbladder is going to start absorbing all that excess glucose so you don't go into sugar shock. It contracts your bladder so you stop wetting yourself. And then it allows blood flow to the sex organs. Again, I'm going to hope this is in a different context than the one I used as my example, because that's what causes erection and lubrication in females. So hopefully this is a different context. But the idea is you've got these two components of your nervous system that are designed to either arouse you or to calm you back down. When we get to the chapter on stress and health, one of the things we'll notice is that a lot of stress-related illnesses occur because we don't have an opportunity for the parasympathetic nervous system to calm us down and reverse some of the effects of the sympathetic nervous system. That's a really important balance that needs to, both sides need to occur when you've been under stress in order for you to not have a negative health effect over time. All right, let's go ahead and finish up with just a little nod to the endocrine system. The endocrine system is an interesting system because if you think about your neurotransmitters as being your fast communication system, endocrine system, which also uses molecules called hormones, could be considered your slow messenger system. Those hormones in your body can take seconds, in the case of adrenaline, to have their effect, to days in the case of estrogen or progesterone in the female. So these are things that, or we could talk about the pituitary gland and its effect on growth. I mean, that takes years for those effects to be seen. Your metabolism is affected by your thyroid gland, and again, that could be over months that it has its effect. So the endocrine system allows for communication within your body, and the thing that makes it interesting for psychology is that the hypothalamus is the part of your brain that controls all these hormones and makes sure that they stay in balance, hopefully. When your hormones are out of balance, it oftentimes can be traced back to something going on in your brain that's causing the glands not to secrete at the right rate. Things like that. So, and we'll be talking about the role of the ovary and the testes later when we talk about gender and sexuality. So we'll hit those later. Okay, so let's go ahead and stop here, and we'll pick up in the next segment talking about how we monitor activity in the brain.